Thanks, Bob. Just if anyone wants a little bit more information about the council, I brought a few of our information leaflets up and put them on the back table. There's some little cards that have our website, which also has this on it, and all of our publications. So please grab either one of those and have a look on our website. Just before I get into the needs assessment, Bob mentioned the monitoring evaluation framework that the council has been working on for quite a while now. And one of the key roles of the Palliative Care Council is to monitor and evaluate the implementation of the palliative care strategy. But we're actually going a bit beyond that because we know that the strategy probably doesn't reflect the situation with palliative care in New Zealand anymore. So our monitoring evaluation framework is taking the vision of the strategy and the key outcomes that the strategy wanted to achieve, putting those at the top, and then looking at what is everyone doing at the moment across the whole spectrum of the palliative care sector, and how does all of that stuff fit into what we're all trying to achieve, which is the vision of the palliative care strategy. So after a number of iterations, the council currently has a document that we are hoping will be signed off at our next meeting, which outlines the approach to monitoring evaluation that we are taking, which is a focus on outcomes rather than a focus on outputs or activities, where we say we've done activity and we've done this output. What we want to look at is, did the activity and did that output from that activity actually make a difference to the outcomes we want to see, which is around access to palliative care, coordination of palliative care, and high quality palliative care. So if the framework, which we've just been doing some more work on, gets signed off at the next meeting, it will be published hopefully in the next probably 2 months so that everyone can have a look at it. And the step after that, so this first document will outline our approach and show the framework and the high-level outcomes. The next phase of that will be looking at what are the indicators that we can measure that will tell us whether or not the things that we're all doing are actually making a difference to those outcomes. So that's where that's at. So keep an eye out for that. We will let everyone know when the framework document is published, so you can have a look at it. And we are hoping that our high-level outcomes, which we think is what everyone is working towards, will also provide a framework for us, for the Ministry of Health, for Hospice New Zealand, for the networks, for individual organisations to map out what they're doing and look at how what they're doing or what you're doing fits into the high-level outcomes that we're all trying to achieve, because really it's all the same thing, and it's about making sure that everyone in New Zealand who's dying or has a life-limiting illness has access to high-quality palliative care. So keep an eye out for that, and then probably in about 6 to 12 months' time we'll have our first go at measuring whether or not what we're doing is making any difference out as a separate report as well. So the main thing I want to talk to you guys about today is the health needs assessment for palliative care. And this is a piece of work that's been going on for, initially probably thought of about 18 months ago, and the intensive work over the last 12 months to collect the data, do the analysis and write up the report. So as Bob mentioned, one of the things that we wanted to do with this report is to find out for New Zealand on a national basis and also by DHB regions how many people would benefit from receiving palliative care. And the rationale behind that is because you all know the vision of the palliative care strategy is that all people who are dying, or better terminology now is all people who have a life-limiting or life-threatening illness have access to high-quality palliative care. But we really don't know, or didn't know, who the all were, so we couldn't look at what services we should have in place to meet the need, because we didn't really understand what the need was. So the purpose of this needs assessment is to identify how many people are out there in New Zealand who might benefit from palliative care, and what does that group of people look like. So also just to mention the advisory group, so I haven't gone on and done all this work just by myself because it's in my little desk down Lambton Quay. We had an expert advisory group, and the people on that were Professor Rod McLeod, Professor Merrin Gott, Dr. Michael Boyd and Joanna Broad. They're all based in Auckland. Saskia Boyman from the Ministry of Health Cancer Team was also on that group, and Craig Tamlin was on that group, and it was chaired by Mary Schumacher from Hospice New Zealand. So what we tried to do with that group was get people who really had experience in the research side of things, particularly looking at research into palliative care, but also, as you'll see when I start presenting this data, or if you've read the report, that the main group of people that are highlighted in this report are older people, and so having Michael Boyd on board with the advisory group was really important from that perspective. And Joanna Broad is a researcher who works with Michael, particularly around epidemiology, so her input was vital as well. So let's get started. Probably some of you already read this document. It's purposely been made not too big and complicated, so it's easy to read and understand, and that was the way that I tried to write it, so hopefully that's how it's turned out. But I'm just going to highlight some of the key findings and answer any questions about it really today. So I've talked about the purpose of the needs assessment, and what it does. There's kind of two main components to it. One is an analysis of New Zealand population demographics relevant to palliative care, and the second part is developing some estimates of the number of people who would benefit from palliative care. And in order to do that, we use data from the mortality collection, data from the National Minimum Data Set on hospital admissions, census data from 2006, which is good but somewhat out of date now, and it's a pity we didn't get a census this year because we could have provided some up-to-date information. And also the NZ DEP, which is the Atlas of Socioeconomic Deprivation. And in order to make it a bit more useful and hopefully relevant to our population, is we did some estimates for adults, which we called people who are 20 and over, and for children and young people. And we did that because it's quite well recognised that especially the CYP, or the children and young person group, is different to the adults. They have different needs, but they also have a different range of conditions where palliative care has been used. And you'll see that when I talk about one of the estimates. So this is the two components in detail. So the demographic data that was looked at was age, gender differences in the population, ethnic composition and religious affiliation, single person retired households and deprivation. And then the estimates of palliative care need include the adults and children, and then an analysis of the characteristics of that group. It's probably not that great, but we had a go at looking at the prevalence of problems and symptoms, and the reason that's probably not that great is because there's not a great deal of data available on the prevalence of problems and symptoms in the palliative care population, and particularly for New Zealand, I don't believe there's any data available on a national basis. And also a look at where people are dying. So just to highlight some of the important demographic information about our population. So between 2006, which is the census year, to 2026, New Zealand's population is expected to increase by 19%, but that's not the same across all DHBs. It ranges from -7, which is in Wanganui, to +40, which is in Counties Manukau, and everything in between. In 2006, about 12% of the population was over 65, and 1.4% over 85 years of age. In 2026, that's going to be almost 19% over 65 and 2.3% over 85. So you can see a fairly significant increase in the number of people in the older age group, and it's also set to go up more after that. By between probably 2021 and 2061 is going to be the biggest bulge of older people in New Zealand. The other interesting thing is around the ratio of working age people, which is people between the ages of 15 and 64, to the number of people over 65. In 2006, it was about 5-1, but in 2026, it'll be a ratio of about 3-1, so many fewer people in the working age group than the older group, which has issues around care providers, either informal care or us as healthcare professionals, who's going to make up that group. And the gender split in the country, it's fairly even, about 49% males and 51% females. That's pretty much the same across all DHBs, apart from the West Coast, which is the other way around. And I don't know why that is. But interestingly, and I think I've got a graph of this later on, when you get to age 90, over 70% of that age group is females. So I was thinking before about having a surrogate. If you are a male, don't choose your partner, but if you're, because they're probably not going to, you're not going to out-survive them. Oh no, sorry, if you're a male, the other way around, if you're a male, having a female partner is good, but if you're a female, don't choose your husband or partner because they're going to die before you do. Sorry, I thought I'd put that up. So this is a graph showing the population changes in different DHBs. That's counties Manukau at the top, and Wanganui taking a dive down the bottom. And you can see there's a big spread. The black line in the middle is New Zealand DHB population averages. So you can see this is just population predictions as well, produced by Statistics New Zealand, so it may not actually pan out this way, but this is what's expected. And these are, again, whole population projections from 2006 on the first graph through to 2026. The red line tracks the same age group. And I think I chose my age group, so I know how old I am by then. But you can see that the bulges are changing. They're getting higher and higher up, and the pyramidal shape of the population is changing. So there's more older people, essentially, and less people in the working age group down the bottom here. So when we look at mortality, so this is using mortality data from 2007, over age 65 years old age group made up 77% of all deaths. But for Māori, Pacific, and interestingly for Asian ethnic groups, they're predominantly dying at a younger age, so they don't have a peak of deaths at the end. This graph illustrates it better. So the lighter line is the other ethnic groups. The blue line is Māori, pink line is Pacific, and the yellow is Asian. So you can see they all have a higher rate of death in this age group here, between sort of 40 and 60. So they don't get the high peak of deaths in the older age group. It's just an interesting thing to think about when you're providing services for these people, because you're not going to get the large number of older people in these ethnic groups. Services are probably going to have to be focusing down here. But in saying that, the cause of death for these people is probably a bit different, although there will be heart disease, respiratory disease, but down around this area, particularly for Māori and Pacific, you can see there's a higher death rate as well, which is probably from accidents and other causes that aren't amenable to palliative care. So for men, about 73% of deaths were in the over 65-year-old age group, but for women it was 82%, so there's quite a big gender difference there. 57% of all female deaths were in women aged over 80, and that accounted for 66% of all deaths in that group. So the majority of deaths in the older age groups are women. I forgot how to set this up, so I'm not pushing the button enough. But this graph shows that, and you can see that in the older age group there's many more females because more men have died at a younger age again. What that means, for those of you who read the report will have read the bit about, what that really means is that there will be a lot of women who lose their partner who end up either living by themselves or needing care, and will ultimately probably die in care and need to be looked after by someone else because they probably would have looked after their partner who died. And that's reflected in a study that was done in Auckland residential care facilities that found about 70% of the residents were females. And that's probably similar around the country, I would say.